when I started Creative Business Cup back in 2012 as Creative Business Cup, I had the pleasure of someone or a couple of people from Lego to come all the way to Copenhagen, participate in the Danish finals. They took place at the City Hall, and one of them was Daiva Naldal. She has another last name that is unpronounceable, almost like my last name. And she lives in Vejle, which is about 2 hours from Copenhagen, in a wonderful place. Used to be in charge of open innovation efforts, development at Lego. Now she's been helping us out here at Creative Business Network to develop our open innovation, so to speak, and also what we do. Great support. And also, extra tip, Daiva has been in the Danish jury and in the Global Finals jury quite a few times. I don't know if you were also part of some of the other juries this spring. Maybe you were. So Daiva can maybe at the end of her presentation give some tips on where does a vote go. I think you were part of the discussions in 2019 about who would be the top 12 and the top 5, if I remember correctly. Last time we had everyone here. So Daiva, pleasure to see you here again. And I know you guys are really going to benefit from speaking with Daiva about the innovation part and also working with corporates and all that. The B2B aspects of being a startup, I guess, is part of your talk, isn't it? It's all yours. The Zoom is yours, Daiva.
Thank you, Rasmus, and thank you for your very nice introduction. And hello, everybody. Hello from Vejle. Very nice to see you, and I hope you enjoyed the academy, even though it's online this time. But that's also an opportunity to meet everybody online this time. So my session today would be about how startups work with corporates, and what are the opportunities and what are the obstacles and challenges. And I hope that we will have a very interactive session, so that you can ask questions and I will try my best to answer those, because I've been on both sides. So to say, I spent my many years working for corporates like Lego and some other companies before, and working with startups, both crowdsourcing but also co-creating with startups. So I know what it takes from the corporates to embark on the journey working with the startups. But now for the last couple of years, I also worked more and more intensively helping startups to actually develop their businesses. So I know also what are the challenges from the startup side. So I will try to connect those two in my presentation. So I will share the screen now. Okay, let me know if you see the big blue window.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Danielle, do you want to say something before I go on, or are we all good?
No, we're good.
We're good. All righty. Okay. So, there you go. Okay. So, objective with my session today is, of course, to share my insights that I have, both on opportunities and the obstacles, but also to share some examples how, for example, Lego works with the startups and creative and other type of entrepreneurs, and give my best tips and advice on how you can maybe implement this into your strategy. So why I'm talking about it, Rasmus already mentioned a little bit about my background, but I worked with the global brands for more than 20 years, and very much in the marketing and new biz development. So that's why I kind of feel that I can share some of the tips and my best insights today. But let's jump into it. And we will do like the Mentimeter session in the beginning, because I really would like to know, so how many of you already have some experience working with the big companies, with corporates? So we will use the Mentimeter where you can answer that question. So Daniela, how we do that?
Yeah, give me just 1 second and I'm going to share my screen now. There we go. So same instructions, please go to menti.com. Grab your cell phone or your other browser and insert the code. Yes, thank you so much. There is the code. And answer this question.
So we only have one now first.
Yeah. How many of you have experience with working or collaborating with big corporations? You have 4 options, no, 5 options. Do not have experience, have collaborated in the past, in the process of approaching big companies, have had a good experience so far, and had bad experience previously. Okay, good, in process.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
Okay, maybe just about it. So it looks like many of you are actually collaborating or collaborated with the other companies or the bigger companies in the past, or trying to approach them. And good to see that no one has like very bad experience working with the corporates. That's a good start. That's a good news. Sometime, you know, when I run this session, sometimes I have quite a few numbers also on the last one. So it's really good to see that you don't have experienced big challenges yet working with corporates. So I think that's very good, because you know, that will help also to shape the session. So okay, so let's go back into the presentation. Cool. Okay. So, okay, so when we talk about collaboration principles, right? So I think whether it's working with corporates or whether it's working with other partners you have, or with anyone. So I think the collaboration principles, you probably agree, are more or less the same and universal. So any collaboration has to be beneficial for both parties, right? So it has to be win-win. It has to be something good for you, but it also has to be something good for the corporate. And why I'm saying this, because sometimes I also experienced that, you know, there are many companies or innovators, they have the great ideas and they think this would be so good for this company, for example, for Lego. And maybe Lego doesn't think that they could use the idea, and they don't think that could be like, you know, a win-win situation. So I think then, you know, oh, there's a chat. Sorry, I'm looking. There are coming so many things in the chart. Okay, yeah, looking in the chat while talking. Sorry. So sometimes is so that, you know, that you might think that your idea could be perfect for the company, but the company thinks like, well, we don't really want to use this. We don't see that creates value. So it's not because the idea is not good. It's just because the other party or your collaboration partner, whether it's the corporate, they don't see that your idea could bring value for their business. So that could be one of the cases. Sometimes it's also it's about the timing, right? Usually when we look at the startups, entrepreneurs, innovators, usually you have ideas that are ahead of time, right? So you kind of very future focused and future thinking. And sometimes when you look into the big corporations, they're probably not so fast. So they might just be a little bit behind, and their timelines, sort of how they plan and how they implement, could be a bit slow. So sometimes the very best idea could be in the wrong timing, and also, have no. So collaboration wouldn't happen then if, let's say, the corporate would not be able to implement that at this point of time. So timing is also essential. And of course, the last is, having a very clear goals and rules when approaching a corporate. It's very, very essential. Let me give you an example. I just remember last time when we talked to a startup with a very good idea actually about some playful innovation. But they didn't know sort of what they want to achieve from the collaboration partner as Lego. So the lady came about saying like, well, I have this idea and I just would like to work with you. And the company said like, well, so what exactly do you expect? Do you want to sell your idea? Do you want to join the company? Do you want to sell the rights to your idea? And then, the answer from startup was like, I don't know, anything would go. And that's just not good enough. When you don't really have your sort of clear expectations and how you want to approach, what do you want to achieve, that could also be a deal breaker, as in any collaboration. I'm sure you have probably experienced things like that, and you would probably recognize things like that from your own practices, right? So, but when we look at the many big corporations, many big names and many big brands, most of them, they know how to work with creative startups or startups. Because if you think about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe there was kind of a bit of new thing, and the processes and the rules and the programs were not in place. That every year as we go, this becomes a very normal, or even like a must. So I think all the big companies, they know they need to innovate and they need to attract new ideas from outside. They need to have what I call the open innovation practices, where they can involve either sort of external creative talents or even work with the startups and co-create some of ideas together. So both the Lego group where I worked for many years, but then Procter & Gamble, IKEA, even NASA, they also involve many external talents and startups when they need to solve their space challenges. So there are so many things that you need to sort of take care of. So they're really practicing that, working and co-creating with external talents and startups, new ideas. And then Starbucks and Tesla and even McDonald's. So there are so many brands that now acknowledge the need and opportunities working with creative startups. So a question to you, where you can sort of type in the chat. So what companies have you, or what brands and what companies have you worked with or want to work with on your business idea that you have? Just type, your answer, and then we can then address that later on as we go with the session. So just giving you some examples sort of how different companies works with startups. For example, if you go to the big corporate as the Procter & Gamble, you could imagine like the number of products that they have and the number of different suggestions and ideas that people would have also would be like thousands, if not tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. Okay, so So the corporates also need to find out sort of how do we structure our process, and can we actually receive all the ideas or only few. So if you look at Procter & Gamble, they have this program, a special program. It's called Connect and Develop. So what they do, they actually post some of the topics or some of the areas, but they are willing to receive inputs and ideas. As you can see, like there's 7 current. So if you go to their website, so you can see if there's 7 or 5 or how many, and they would specify. So then you know that they only able to look in these type of product or technology ideas as for now, and that's a good help. Or sometimes could be disappointed, but at least that's a good help to filter and screen sort of like what is possible if you have idea to pitch there. Then you probably recognize IKEA. IKEA also has many different startups collaborating on new product ideas and new technologies, also new services. So IKEA runs every year, they run the creative boot camps. That is also defined very well, sort of how the startups can come in and then pitch their ideas, and they can even enroll in the special support or accelerator programs together with IKEA to evolve their idea. So that's also a very established program, which is then the good news. And then if you think about the Lego group, then the Lego group also has established now a special team or special department is called Lego Ventures, that are actually outside of the normal, so to say, Lego business. So they focus on the new innovative ventures that the Lego can support and embark on. So, and these of course are ventures around the same Lego idea, the same Lego principle, which is about stimulating the creativity and playful learning, for children. So, for example, if you have an idea and you are at early stage and you want to work on maturing that idea and implementing that together, for example, with the Lego group. So one of the channels would be then to reach out to the Lego Ventures incubation studio that could help then to mature and accelerate your idea. So a few examples. So sometimes some of the companies, they don't have those structures, right? And then sometimes they're like, okay, so if I really want to reach out, say like what topics that companies are interested in or what areas. And there's probably no secret that a very important agenda today is the social and corporate responsibility and being climate and people and profit conscious. So if you have the idea that is around sustainable development goals and links into a specific company business and opportunities, I think this would be a very good match to start with. Okay. So many times I'm also asked, saying like, okay, so what are the essentials? So like, what are the main things that the corporates really value? And looking through different cases, I also been looking through different cases that some other companies, but also at Lego. I think these are sort of going across the main 3 things. And first of all, as I probably mentioned before, it's how does your idea or your solution or your product actually fits to the company strategy. And that's very much, that's the key, because I also really have seen many great ideas that have been pitched, for example, to Lego group, that have been outside of the Lego strategy. So even you think that idea you have could be wonderful addition for the Lego portfolio, but if the Lego strategy is, focusing on specific direction or specific markets, and it's has to be about playful learning. So, and it doesn't fit for now, you probably will not be able to convince the corporate that they should take your idea in now. So the fit to the strategy, and sometimes they're like, how do I know whether my idea fits to the corporate strategy? And I think that's about taking a little bit time to do your homework. It's to really go to the sites, to the official websites, read the news, and you really will have the presentations on sort of like what is the focus areas for the next year to come, or for the next 3 years to come. So you will know what key elements of the strategy is with that corporate. Second, I think it's also very important, but not always mentioned or highlighted, because working together, co-creating together, it's very much about how we work together. So sometimes, like when we don't click, so to say, together, and when we have a different value sets or different expectations, or we don't talk very well, that could be also a deal breaker. So the corporates, when they look at your idea, they also look at the team or a person behind it. Like, are we able to understand each other? Are we able to collaborate? Is our working principles the same? So sometimes you really need to sort of, lose your, sometimes maybe lose your, a little bit of your good arrogance, as you need to be the creative, and to equip yourself with patience, because that's what would probably be required working with the bigger companies. And last but not least is also simplicity and clarity. And that's again and again, I feel like, being very clear. What do you have, what you expect, right? What you need, and what are the rules that you want to play with. So being very clear about your idea. So if you are not able to explain your opportunity in 2 seconds, in 2 minutes, your elevator pitch, that could be also very difficult to sell into the corporates. So these are kind of like very generic, but so very, very important things that are sort of the first steps when considering the dialogue or pitching and working with the corporates. I see you also sent some names of the big companies you are planning or you're working with, and there's some of them really big international, like Renault, Netflix, Henkel, which is great, like Coca-Cola. So most of those, or a few of those, I know they really have like very well established collaboration processes. How will they work with the startups, and sort of what are the rules and expectations? And some of them, they might have it more opportunistic sort of way of looking at your idea. Right. I think before we go into discussions, I will go into the next slide, because I think that would be really good for us to hear some of your experiences and some of your opinions. So the next Mentimeter question would be, that will be our discussion starter, would be, so what do you see are the main obstacles for you working with corporates? And here I need the help from Daniela again to put on the screen.
Yes, there it is, the question. If you can go one more time to menti.com, use the same code and answer this question. What are your biggest obstacles in collaboration with big companies? Difficult to find the right person at the big company. I'm afraid that they were going to steal my idea without compensating me. I am not too sure how to approach the company. I have tried to contact big companies, but without success, other barriers or obstacles. I believe that you can choose more than one, yes.
Oh yeah, we chose, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, it seems like the majority is difficult to find the right person at the big company.
Right, okay, yes. So we have a little bit of everything, but yeah, most is like difficult to find the right person. And then there are some other ones, and also, yeah, there's a little bit sort of fear of that they could steal the idea, and it's difficult. So I would like now to ask you to join in discussion, and you will, some of you who mentioned there that you already working, for example, with maybe P&G or will try, or Coca-Cola, or Netflix, and Warner Music, Henkel, and Danone. Would anyone would be willing to share their sort of short story, saying like, okay, we do this, and this is our main challenge, or how does this collaboration go?
Yeah, they have been sharing in the chat, and I'm going to read it, but we'd love to, if you can speak a little bit more about this. So, for example, the person in charge doesn't have the vision.
Yeah, so you can just speak up if you can. That would be the best, because then we can.
Yes, that was mine. Hello, I'm Olga from Moldova. So actually, it's not about the startup, it's about my company that does visual communication and graphic design. Sometimes we work with big local brands, and the head of marketing or the CEO even of the company doesn't see doesn't get it, probably that point that you were talking about, when it's too in the future for them. It's not probably the right moment for them, but sometimes we have communication proposals that are really good for their brand, not for us, just to be fancy, but really that would solve the brand's problem. But they are stubborn sometimes, or they are too egocentric, and they do not just have this vision, and you cannot do anything because they have a top management position. So you actually just, even the team, sometimes the team understands everything really good, but the top of the marketing or the CEO doesn't get it. So
yeah, I think that's a very good case, and probably the common story for many creative agencies. And I think, from experience, I think the only thing that matter, and then it's the facts and the success story. So if somehow you can make it small steps, maybe even like on your own, showing how that that you're proposing created value for somebody else, and how they can be of value for the company. And always the facts that are talking to the management, I think.
thank you.
Perfect.
Anyone would like to share their story? Sorry.
Have more comments, like Constantine stealing also means a tender. If you want to share with us.
Yes, by tender I mean working pro bono. It's when a big company organizes a tender, and one of the conditions is to offer some ideas or some drafts of the future key visual or the future strategy. And so at the end of the competition, the company has 5 ideas or 6 ideas. And none of these companies are working yet for the big brand.
Yeah, I think, and that's probably like the unfortunately, that's the practice of the industry, right? So there are many sort of competitions and many pitches that you could come in and present, and only some of them would win, right? Some of them will be chosen, and unfortunately, some of those the conditions that whether you want to pitch or not. But I think if you really go to work with like a big companies, I think this practice is changing from what I know. So even for the first presentations and for the first pitches, so companies now actually provide some smaller compensations, so nobody expects the ideas for free. And I think what's important then, as you mentioned, maybe that it's important to get the conditions right. So let's say if you provide a creative idea and it's not chosen, so it's important that you aligned with then who owns the rights to that idea afterwards, right? So whether you can utilize it elsewhere or whether the company owns that. So having those alignment rules from the beginning is very important, so you don't get surprised afterwards and like, okay, I didn't know that the company would own my idea. For example, I'll give you one example also from the Lego group. Then if you submit your product idea for the platform called ideaslego.com, so like your idea for the new Lego set and so forth, then you actually sign that then this idea now it's sort of not yours anymore, and then the company can actually use that. Because for the company it's also a nightmare to get and manage sort of every creative idea and to actually protect that, but also to differentiate that. So for the simplicity, for being able to run those programs, but many people can come in and pitch their ideas. So I think that was the Lego choice, like we cannot sort of go one by one and then see like how do we protect or how do we protect the ownership for the startups of this idea. So sometimes this is just practicality.
Yes, perfect. We have another comment. My biggest obstacle is the time it takes to close the deals. Yeah, can be. Another comment. Our idea, I guess, is the corporate without losing the core. To fit our idea to the corporate without losing the core.
Oh, okay. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What do you mean by that?
Dimitri, if you can.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, I mean, you have your idea or your startup have a core idea. For example, you help different type of creative person to collaborate in one group, and that have some value. So when you put your idea in front of the big company, corporate, you can lose some strategy point from your core idea if you fit your idea to the big company, because each big company have their own strategy, their own vision, and that's more that's more not affordable, but it's more about working the big company with the creative company. It's like we do experiential marketing, and when we came with some brand activation to the corporate, we need to fit our activation to value of corporates. If you understand me, if not, I can try to elaborate more.
Okay, I'm not sure I can follow, but yeah, are you saying that it's difficult to sort of not to lose your...
To maintain the same idea.
Yeah.
During the collaboration with the big company, sometimes your idea melts into the company culture, and it becomes something different of what you've imagined before.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the co-creation process, and that's what's very good. Then you kind of evolve it together. But before doing that, then it's also, as I mentioned before, it's just so important to align sort of what are the rules of this game, right? How do you want to play? So if you go and then do the cooperation together, of course, then the company probably, will use the idea and will own the idea. But then you just need to agree about sort of like what's in it for you, right? And how you then being compensated for that work, because one thing is having your idea and the other thing is having your talent, right? So working together, it's also about sort of compensating for your talent. Even the idea would be sort of shape itself and be totally different by the end of the process. Right?
Thank you.
Anyone else wants to put the example or a challenge? How you work together with the corporates?
Actually, I want to add to what guys told before. So, what in our experience, whenever we talked to HBS TV or Netflix, they were seeing our product, saying, "Okay, that's really good. Let's put it in tests." And after that, they were coming to us with, "Okay, guys, but can you add some additional features to that?" And actually, those features that they were mentioning is like few months of work of our internal development team. And so of course we put it in the offer. So yes, we can do it. It will take time, and we need to have some money to do that.
Yeah.
We won't prepare it before we sign the contract with you guys, but it's really it's affecting our roadmap and how we think about our development in a longer perspective. So we have to shift some things that we were planning to do later, and we have to bring them to the front. But because there's this temptation that, okay, let's sign a contract with this company, and it will make a lot of sense on many levels, like on financial or legitimize our business much more than we are already. But it's a lot of time. So there is this tension. Should we start now? Should we start working on it and hope that we will close the deal soon? So I don't know, guys, if you have this kind of experiences, and if you can share some of your approaches, because this is the thing we are struggling right now.
So just from from the experience, let's say from the other side of the table, right? I think again it's usually these things happen when it's not clear because you don't align, like say before you go into the work, right? And that's just so important. So my advice would be just always ask as many questions as possible. Put as many clarifying sort of questions about the conditions and timing and payment and everything, because from the experience that I know, it's like if you now working sort of for many years. So now we finally got the systems and the papers and the contracts and sort of the general rules saying like, oh, we do either like this and this, but not all the companies have kind of like a totally sort of unique system that thinks about all those things beforehand. So usually when you work in innovation, so things just happen. So like, oh, just do this, like you say, just do that, and we will figure out. So make sure that you have some kind of like gentleman agreement, or whether it's on the email and without the contract of 100 pages, it's also enough because that's binding. So just saying, oh, we will use 2 months, but we'll need some money to cover our expenses. Can you do that? Then you get yes and no, and then you know that whether will you do or will you not, right? Because you also don't want to work with the companies who don't respect your work, who don't respect your talent, and who will not pay for your work, right? So I think you just really be sharp on the conditions.
I agree. I'll comment a little bit from my experience that also when we've been working with telco companies, and they also ask for additional work for fine-tuning what they need to. You have to pay for that.
You are falling out. Can you please repeat because you followed up?
Yeah. So we just asked them for the money, and then they started to kind of to deal further and back, and then we signed the deal. So are we signing the deal that after we are finishing that you're buying from us, or you're paying for this extra work because it's only for you?
Yeah,
And in the end, they paid. In the end, they paid. So I would like encourage not to be afraid if they are big. They're playing on that.
yeah,
But in the
yeah,
end, they're the
exactly.
human beings. They also
Yeah,
have their
exactly.
own KPIs and the business.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. So maybe you just move on. I have a couple of things more to share, and then we'll continue our discussion, okay? So I will go back to the sharing of a view of the slides I have, and then we continue the discussion. So, okay. So looking to your Mentimeter, but I also kind of, summing that up from all my previous sessions that have been quite a few on this topic. So usually what I see, then, why startups hesitate actually to work with the corporates, because they are sort of afraid being like small, small mouse and, looking at the big elephant. So, being afraid of uncertainty, how and who and how we will deal. So the fear sometimes stops even from going into that. And then there are some times, and we also talking about, there is this kind of theory or a misperception that usually the big companies have the bad intentions. They just want to, steal our work. They just want us, to work without payment, and they just want to steal our ideas. And I think that's going across. That's how that's the perception, I think, or it's what I call the myth, and I will explain why I actually think that. And then the other one was sort of that you also mentioned in the Mentimeter was like, it's kind of not sure where to start and how to start and who to contact to present the idea. But talking about this sort of situations, and especially this sort of intention, myth that, oh, the corporates, they just bad guys. They just wanted to crash our startups. I think it's more the perception rather than reality. So it's a nice picture here. It's like, okay, so is that the reality or is the perception? It could look very real, right? And could sound very real. But I think it's more not being clear, as you also, some of you mentioned about like your expectations, what you want, and not asking the question and being sort of sometimes almost afraid to ask for those clarifying questions, or being afraid to ask for payment for the extra work, or being afraid to ask for intentional documents saying that if you don't like what we do, we will still own our idea if that's important for you. So just put it on the mail. It's enough. You don't need the big document. You don't need the big lawyers to actually make that simple agreement. So don't always think that your perception or your fear is actually the real situation. Because if you think about the big companies, whether Lego or Danone or Coca-Cola or Netflix, would they risk their reputation to have like a big shitstorm, so to say, in the papers that they actually use the idea of startup and to improve something that they had, or that they use many startups free of charge to make it work for them? That would damage their business so much more than the cost that they would have to pay you for the extra hours, or having a good response from you, even if you get no, having the good experience that you will tell to more people about that. So big companies, they don't risk their reputations on this. They don't. So don't think about it as the bad guys, they want to steal or crash. Of course, there are few cases that goes into papers. There are always bad guys, but they are just so few. So usually the big companies, they look always at the win-win, situation, how can we work together and how can we do things that are good for both? So they're just sort of simple preconditions. So thinking positive. But then I just want to show you like maybe one small example from the Lego, and pay attention to the timeline here. So one of the, for example, like a simple collaboration project for Lego was, if you know Lego, if you know the Lego sort of some of products, and you probably know Lego architecture, like the famous world buildings, like the White House and everything like that. It actually started not within the Lego, it started by an architect in Chicago who was very passionate about, of course, the buildings. So like, why Lego you not do that? We really need to do that because I think that's going to be a good business, but it's also a good way of sort of, celebrating the architecture and those buildings. And his name is Adam Tugger. So what he did, he actually lost his job, or I think he didn't like what he was doing as kind of, random architect. So he took his savings and he said like he spent like $3,000 and he bought like plenty of Lego, and he went home and then he was starting building all those solutions. And then actually he did the first products himself. You see like the boxes, like the white boxes there in 2007. And he actually went all the way to, of course, shops and tested it, and in small souvenir shops, and said like, "Oh, will you sell this?" And actually, he realized that it's a business. And then he really called and wrote and many times tried to find the right person within the Lego, because at that time the Lego didn't have sort of like process and the way to collect the ideas and work with entrepreneurs. So he was the one very persistent. He talked to, I don't know, maybe 15 different people, wrote to different people, and then he went to the event, like a fan event, and then he met Paul, whom I was working with also, because we were doing like this, the first sort of new business or incubation startup team within the Lego, looking at like, okay, how do we do like, the cool radical innovation projects, and in the small scale. And that was, you could say, the right timing, the right place, right, and the right person. And that's sort of like what you need to get going. And sometimes you need to try and try and try, and then the right timing, right person, right place, it's the essential for every success of collaboration. And then it started, right? And then it started also being the corporate. Okay, so you put your projects into the budgets for the next year first, right? So you get the budgets next year, then you can start doing something. And that's crazy for the startup. You can't wait like half a year or a year, right? But these are the terms working with the corporate. So, and you see like then this story developed, and Adam did many things himself, because the Lego didn't want to do all those small things. So, he used his own garage, his own floor to pack stuff and send and so, and it's only, you could say, from 2000 and I think 9, that Lego took it, say like, okay, Adam, now we will produce it and we will distribute it, and you will, can design it and, get some shares from sales. So that's, you could see, getting from the first set to even to the first $20,000 only, and then to $20 million, right? It took almost like 7-8 years. So if you want to really work with corporates on time, it could take you years. So you have to be patient if you want to be part of the journey, or you then need to think about like, okay, I don't have the patience, so I want to just sell my idea. So again, being very clear about what you want to do. So that's the story, just to illustrate sort of how long could it take and what it takes, okay? So another example is the Lego Ideas, which is then the innovation or crowdsourcing platform that I was leading and developing in my time. Sort of like, how do we then collect all the ideas for the new products in one place? And that's how the platform, the digital platform, sort of came about. So how do we collect those ideas? How do we validate those ideas? Because there are tens of thousands of ideas and things like that. So that's one of the sort of things how the companies work. And now it's 10 years of Lego ideas already. I mentioned, looking at Lego, I mentioned also the Lego Ventures. So the Lego Ventures is an entity of its own that actually scouting and looking for ideas around the creative building that sort of fits to the Lego DNA, but not necessarily has the brick. It can be technologies, it can be anything about the creative play. So the Lego group then has the ventures, but that's actually has the incubation studio, which is for early stage, but also has the investment fund to fund already sort of startups that are further in their journey, that they need scalability. So there's also option to look at. And then if you really work more like in depth, let's say, you know, something for children and co-creating with children, Lego also has the working space and facilitates sort of like a research and space environment for entrepreneurs and for researchers and, you know, those who create sort of playful concepts to come and sit and work together with others. So it's really kind of like a service and a hub, you could say, like a co-working space as well. And some of the ideas could also then, you know, eventually being sort of financed by the Lego Group or by Lego Foundation. So the areas of investment that the Lego Ventures are looking, as I mentioned before, you could find on their web page, but these are education and technology, of course, and then 21st century skill development for children, new creative or play spaces as well. So, you know, go there, for the Lego Ventures site, look what projects they already have, and there are like what conditions and opportunities are to join in if you think your project would match that. And the same for, you know, for the co-working space that focus on the playful innovation and playful skills. But if you really don't know where your idea goes, that's what Lego Learning came about, saying like, okay, so there's too many already. You know, if we look to the startups, you know, they probably already got lost. How do I start? That's sort of like where the One Innovation Intake portal came about. So now if you had an idea and you want to pitch that to Lego, you go to lego.com and there's like innovation intake. And there's the nice user journey that would guide you. So you know, would ask you some questions about you and then say like, okay, if you have product idea, click here. If you have, you know, technology idea, click here. If you want for investments, you click here, and then you will go into the right funnel. So these are kind of, you see how the company also, even the big, develops also finding the solutions, finding the processes that could work for both, you know, to minimize the resources, to minimize the confusion, to minimize your time to find the right person to talk to, right? So, and I think you probably, those who mentioned there, you know, P&G, Coca-Cola, some other companies, they also have this process organized very well for now. So I think that was sort of like just some examples and some experiences from the Lego, and now some from other companies. But if I then, before we go into discussions again, and maybe, you know, sharing some of your ideas, so my sort of top 5 advices from the observations and from experience that I have working with the startups would be, forget the myth and the fear about that the big company is your enemy and they just want to crash you and they want to steal your idea. Think positive. That always helps. You know, think opportunities, think the win-win, because that's kind of going to be the precondition for going into that collaboration. The other one, so very important, do your homework. And what do I mean by that? Just first of all, before you reach the company, go and read to their website, figure out sort of what conditions they provide. Maybe you find the innovation funnel where you need to, whether you find the right person to contact and you find their strategy description. So you already prepared, you already filtered maybe some of the questions. You maybe figured out that maybe your idea doesn't match to the topics that the company want to look into. Then you save the time and the pain, for finding the right person. And also then you get prepared. It's so, you shine much more, right? So when you reach the company. So please do that, even though that's the boring part of the job. And as I mentioned before, patience. Patience is totally key when working with the corporates. And these are like the two, poles against each other, being the startup, going fast forward, and then being the corporate that needs to, even if I like your idea, even I remember, like, then we need to put that opportunity into the pipeline, which then will be reviewed, once half a year, and then we'll get the budget for it maybe next year, right? That just take time. So remember, sometime when you don't get an answer for a week or a month, it's just not because corporates don't like your idea, or they, it just simply takes so much time to go into that process. And what do we have? Yeah, as I said, like, think win-win situations. So think about that, there has to be a benefit for this collaboration for the company that you're reaching in, as well as for you. So it's not only one way, because one way usually it kind of doesn't work. And you probably don't need this advice being startup, but I'm still putting it in here because having the first no, it doesn't mean no to your idea, because it might be you're just so ahead of time that if you come with the same next year, it will be perfect, right? So it's about the right time, right place, right person. Also, the people are looking at your idea, and this year the person who looked at it, he or she couldn't get it, and the next year would be exactly the right guy or girl to look at that, and you will, get in. So don't think that your idea is not viable for the company even from the first time. It takes time, and you are ahead of time. It takes time for you to sort of convince the company, find the right person, and the right timing. So yeah, so true, somebody writes, because it's just a matter of patience and matter of the keeping the positive energy when you reach out to the corporate. So I think I don't have more of the vice versa, but I would like to answer questions, and we could do some more discussions, because right now, so I also just wanted to leave this one a bit promoting myself and what I do, but right now I actually work with several startups, helping them to grow, sort of on the other side of the table. So if any of you will at some point of time need some help, please reach out. You could also check my website, DSCN Ventures, but now you also have my LinkedIn and other contacts. So that was about what I wanted to share. It was very basic, but I think it's just still very essential. So questions, reflections, please.
Come on, guys, don't be shy. In the survey, you were asking more interaction, very more much comments, more interaction with the speakers, and also they were asking something about business modeling. So Daiva also can respond some of those questions. So please go ahead.
Yeah, please just raise your hand and then we
Yeah.
go on.
Hi. Sorry, I have an issue with the camera, but I can't speak like this.
Okay.
If you don't mind. Yes. Hi. So my name is Walid, and I'm leading a video game studio, and we are publishing games. Actually, I have a tricky question when it's about dealing with the big companies or in open innovation. How do you deal with IP protection or idea protection? I can give you perhaps a more precise example. What happens if you go and pitch them an idea that they are already working on already, but in a different way, let's call it like that, and you help them just enhance the actual idea. So, or any other scenario that can happen.
Yeah. And that's a very, very good question, because the things like that happens a lot. And I can also tell from experience, working with the Lego group, because, sometimes many good ideas kind of, or the same good idea sort of pops up, different places, right? In sort of the same. And imagine also those companies, the big ones, they also have big sort of innovation departments and scouting and many times kind of working on the same idea already. But they wouldn't be able to disclose that, because that would be sort of their sort of, market secret, or, they're preparing for a launch, right? So I remember myself being in that position by like sort of looking at ideas and saying like, oh, shit, we are already kind of doing the same concept, the same project. So we have to say no to the guys, because we don't kind of need the same, but we cannot say them that we're working on it. And when we then bring the product, I know that the guys were like kind of very sad, very angry. They thought that we've stolen the idea, which then was not the case, because the company had the idea. So I think in your terms, like saying, how do I protect my sort of, my idea? I think it's just very much, again, at the beginning to be very clear, if you share the idea, sort of who owns the right to use the idea, to develop idea. And usually, for example, from Lego practice, we would then sign the NDA, like a mutual NDA for the first meetings. And then if in the first meeting you kind of realize that, well, we cannot use the idea for different reasons, sometimes cannot disclose sort of those reasons, then then the company does not own your idea, but even though you kind of share that. So that's a tricky part, and that's why some companies would even look at your idea before you kind of signed off your rights, almost, right, to say that. So that's a part of your risk. And I think now, as the technology develops and as the sort of the whole innovation communities develop, so people are getting more and more sort of open about sharing everything, everything you do. And your sort of IP rights protection becomes like a very, very sort of tiny, sensitive thing, because then developing ideas and sort of, making them open source, usually what makes it bigger. And then sort of at the end of the day, sort of that's how, you join the company, or you get the right to build that idea further. So I don't have any good advice on that, but I think it's just being very clear on your, again, sort of expectation from the beginning. Do you want the NDA? Do you want to keep all your rights, and be prepared to the situation where the company might have something like that, but not able to tell you.
And next Tuesday, we're going to have a session specific in this topic. So please save your question for our expert also in legal issues and property rights. I'm super sure that she is going to be able to give you a more extensive answer to this.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you.
Okay,
let's ask the question.
Yeah, so this is not a question. This is actually some sort of answer to the frustration and the issue. So in the beginning of our journey with our concept, I had an issue with the companies, corporations, large corporations, don't wanting to sign the NDA to see our presentation. I was so frustrated, and they said there's no way we could sign this, because maybe we know some some of these facts already, and if we sign your NDA, blah blah blah. So I was frustrated, and I had to go all the way to a seminar in Stockholm with the Swedish Agency for IP, PRV, Patent Registreringsverket, and there was a seminar on seminar startup cooperation, and I told them my frustration. And they said, so the solution is to have a presentation with a black box, and the black box is then the how. So you present your idea, what you're about to do, what you solve, but you put a big black box on top of the solution, and that will trigger them to want more to a meeting number 2. And at meeting number 2, you then sign the NDA and you can disclose your how. And that was pretty good. So that's what I've done. I've then put a big black box on top of the how, and all of a sudden I can share. I can even send the presentation on mail.
Yeah.
So that was a great solution.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's really very good story. Like, it's very good example. Like you say, you need to sort of show the to sort of show the expected results, right? To expected the product or solution. And then if that is relevant for the company, for their strategy, they will then really want to talk to you. Yeah, that's a very good one. Thank you. Anyone else want to share something or discuss? Okay. Everybody's so happy now. Tired in the afternoon, maybe. Okay. So, well, I think that then I hope that this helped a little bit to sort of clarify maybe some doubts, but also to sort of manage your expectations and to prepare for your next pitch, reaching the big companies. And all the best of luck. And I think if you then just wanted to close this with a note, and if you need the help or if you have any reflections later on, just please get in touch. And I'll do my best to help you where I can through the network or through the insights. And so wonderful to see you. And I'm the big fan of the creative industries, because at the end of the day, we all know that creativity is going to solve the world, not the technology, right? That's my closing note of this session. So now it's up to you, Daniela.
Okay, yes, if we don't have any other question, thank you so much, Daiva, for being here with us today. And yes, thank you one more time for supporting us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Daiva.
Bye, thanks a lot.